And welcome on this parallel session on art and culture. My name is Jurn Verschraegen. I'm the director of the Expertisecentrum on Dementia in Flanders, Belgium. You're a big group, so it's lovely to see it, and we hope that you will enjoy this parallel session. It will be started by Olivier Constant. But before that, I would remind you that you need to, because this is a hybrid session, you need to download the app of Alzheimer Europe to participate to the Q&A. For that, you have to download it online in the App Store or in the Google Play Store. So the first speaker of this afternoon is, of this parallel session is Olivier Constant about the European project he conducted, Dementia in Cultural Mediation, Improving Quality of Life Through Arts and Culture. It has been made up together with other countries and together with our colleague Herlinde Dilly. Olivier.
Yeah, I hope my slides will pop up now. Or do I have to press on something? Or okay, here we go. So good afternoon, everybody. I hope you all hear me more or less clear enough. It's an honor to look back to you today on, well, what was actually really like a fascinating journey that we've been able to take together with the project partners the past 2.5 years. So as the project coordinator of the Flemish Expertisecentrum on Dementia, I would first like to tell you a little bit more about the mission of the project, and obviously also about the unexpected roads that we have traveled together with the project partners. After that, I'll conclude with telling you a little bit more about the project outputs, and I will also take a look at the futures based on the lessons learned and the ambitions achieved during the project. So today I would like to start with a quote from Chris Mees, which you see here on the right of the slides. Chris is a member of our Flemish working group of people with dementia, and before his diagnosis of dementia, Chris had been active as an art history teacher for many years, and Chris also contributed to the final publication of the Dementia in Cultural Mediation project. So when I asked Chris what art means to him, Chris summed it up as follows, and I'll quote his words. As an art historian, teacher, and art lover, art is an integral part of my life. Dementia doesn't change the essence of who I am, what I like, and what gives my life meaning. In fact, every person is an artist and creatively shapes his or her own life. Art can be healing, and it helps us to give a place. Life itself is one fascinating process of shaping and sculpting. So, and I think the words of Chris also perfectly articulate the central goals we had at the start of our international collaboration. We had a clear focus on the potential added value that arts and culture can have for the quality of life of people with dementia and their loved ones. And we also wanted to make initiatives in the field more sustainable. Apart from that, we also wanted to reach out proactively to cultural actors, care organizations, and local authorities to move forward towards inclusive policies and a more holistic view on care and support. So, and we built on that mission starting in September 2019 until the finalization of the project in August of this year, together with 5 enthusiastic partners from 4 countries, as you can see here all portrayed on the map. From Belgium, these were the University of Brussels and our organization, the Flemish Expertisecentrum on Dementia. From the Netherlands, we had Healthy Aging Network Northern Netherlands involved. From Spain, the Gerontological Institute, Mattia Ingema, and from Denmark, the local library of the city of Odense. Oh, that's, I don't know how I can go. Yeah, okay. So, as you can see here on the left picture on the slide, it was also in the city of Odense that the startup meeting of the project took place in November 2019. And obviously, we also made further plans to translate the ambitions of the project into practice. But as you all know, then a certain virus suddenly appeared, forcing us to write a completely different story. And then we go to the right picture on the slide. So just before we had to leave to Odense in early March 2020 for the first learning, teaching and training moment, the trip had to be cancelled due to the emerging threats of the coronavirus. And actually from then on, almost until the finish of the project, we were dependent on the wonderful world of online meetings, online webinars. As you can imagine, anything but obvious for a team as art and culture, which really depends on the location, on the feeling in the moment. So, because the project has largely taken place online during the coronavirus pandemic, the gap between the expectations initially and the reality was large, as you can see here on this representation graphically on the slides. But with the necessary creativity and a lot of enthusiasm, we nevertheless managed to take a step forward so that the original ambitions of the project could still be realized at the end of the journey, despite the distance between the project partners. So in the second part of the presentation, I'll briefly take a closer look at the project realizations, which actually consist of three basic pillars portrayed here on the slide. The first pillar is the project website that we launched in March of this year, packed with inspiring projects from a wide range of social artistic expressions. We also launched a video channel on which all audiovisual presentations of the projects are nicely bundled, and we also have our social media active on Facebook and Twitter. In addition, each project presentation also includes a detailed project sheet and training material with many useful tips and background information. And as a conclusion of this project, there is our recommendations publication under the title Towards a Dementia-Inclusive Society, an art. This report bundles all experiences and relevant project knowledge. So here you can see a screenshot of the homepage of the website where the different good practices from the 5 project partners can be consulted through a user-friendly structure. And as you can see here, there's a screenshot of our dedicated YouTube channel on which people can find all the 30 projects from Dementia in Cultural Mediation, and they're also bundled in dedicated playlists for each country. So, as I told like a minute ago, of all the 30 initiatives, there were also detailed project sheets delivered, and they can also be found and downloaded for free on the website. And I think that's really important because these sheets really tell from start to finish how you set up a project, what are the opportunities, what are the barriers, and actually people can not only find inspiration, but also can pick and choose like the elements that could be relevant for their current or future project. So apart from that, the website also contains a lot of additional didactic training material, such as communication tips, points of interest during the startup phase of a project, elaboration and sustainability of a new initiative, ideas for activities within specific settings, such as a local care center, the local library, and so on. Here's a wide screenshot of our Facebook page, and I would highly recommend to follow the page because like this period we set like each week a new project within the spotlight, so you can really have like a clear view or a fast view on all the different projects that were included from the different partners in the Dementia in Cultural Mediation initiative. And finally, there's also, for the people who are active on Twitter, a dedicated Twitter page where we give more background information on arts and culture for people with dementia in general. So, last but not least, there is, well, the final publication of the project, which is not only available in English, but there's also a summary available, translated in Spanish, Dutch, Danish, and also English. And With this publication, we not only want to inform about the project results, about the experiences, about the learning points, but we also want to inspire people to develop a more sustainable cultural and social artistic offer tailored to people with dementia, their relatives and carers. And throughout the publication, which you can also download freely on the website, the voice of the end user was our compass. And I think that's an important point to stress and to conclude this presentation with, because the project experiences and results were continuously reviewed by a European reference group. And this reference group not only consisted of highly experienced people in the field, but also of the end users themselves, people with dementia and informal caregivers. And as experts by experience, people with dementia and their caregivers were in this way also the quality check throughout the project from start to finish. So, and we're convinced that the voice of people with dementia and everyone involved in the care must also be our compass and our quality check in the future. And I think this quote, which you can read here on the slide, it's a quote from Jan van Gils. And Jan van Gils lives with dementia, and he has been part of our working group of people with dementia. But more importantly, he's also an active painter, and on the right hand of the slide you see one of Jan's paintings. And I think this quote from Jan really summarizes why an emancipatory vision within a project such as Dementia in Cultural Mediation is and remains also important for the future. So here's the final slide, and you can see here a picture from March of this year, and all the project partners then finally had the chance to meet live again during the final meeting as well, which took place in the Spanish capital of Madrid. And I think the group picture we took there speaks for itself. Everyone was super enthusiastic that we could finally exchange the distance of the online conversations for proximity once the project was completed. And obviously, we also hope that this can continue to be the case in the future. And personally, I hope that all of you gained an extra dose of creativity and enthusiasm today. For now, I would like to say van harte bedankt. That is our language from Belgium. If there are any questions, feel free to ask them now or to get in touch later during the conference. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Olivier, for your contribution. Very interesting to see how a project build bridges. The theme of this meeting, build bridges between culture and dementia, challenges and opportunities, as you mentioned in your presentation. For the next speaker, we have Victoria Tischler from the UK, and she will tell us about creativity and relational support, using a remote arts-based intervention to enhance the care of people with dementia. The floor is yours.
Hello everybody, it's lovely to be here. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be in a room full of people who are interested in arts and culture in dementia care, so it's great to be here. Yes, I'm Victoria Tischler. I work at the University of Exeter in the medical school in the United Kingdom, and I'm principal investigator on a research project called Culture Box, which I'm going to tell you a bit about this afternoon. First, I'm going to provide some background to the project, tell you about the aims and methods. If I can work this, yes. The aims and methods that we used. I'll present some of the key results and conclusions and a few pointers for future research activities. And I'd really like to start by acknowledging all my colleagues on the Culture Box team who've contributed so much to the project. As you'll see, the slides contain lots of beautiful images that represent some of the many artistic activities and creative collaborations that we had as part of Culture Box. All of the materials that we created during the Culture Box project are now available open access through the Culture Box study website, and I'll give you that at the end of this talk. So a little bit of background to the study. As many of you will appreciate, Residents in care homes were severely negatively impacted during the COVID-19 pandemic, and I've provided a chart here on the right-hand side of the slide where you'll see that there were very high rates of mortality within care homes. Those from Black and racialized communities were particularly disproportionately negatively impacted. People in care homes experienced high rates of mortality, high levels of social isolation, loneliness, and responsive behaviors. These all increased as external visitors stopped in care homes, including visits from artists, musicians, and other creative practitioners. Myself and my colleagues in the Culture Box project responded to that by providing interactive creative activities for use between members of care staff and residents living with dementia in care homes. So we referred to each of these as a dyad. This presentation considers the impact of these activities on the promotion of relational care. So everybody knows about person-centered care in dementia settings, but relational care may be considered even more optimal for those with dementia. And this involves characteristics such as forging compassionate relationships, sharing of common experiences, development of trust between staff and residents, and generally spending time together and getting to know each other. And here I think of relational care as a mutual process of caring. So now to the aims of the project. So the aims of Culture Box were to alleviate social isolation and loneliness in care homes and to provide stimulating creative activities to enhance social interaction between members of care staff and residents living with dementia. We also provided accessible public health information developed specially for people living with dementia, and we had a particular focus on reaching people with dementia from diverse communities. This presentation focuses on the response to the creative materials that we included in Culture Boxes. We used participatory action research, or PAR, to assess the process and impact of the project. PAR is a really useful method to use, particularly in a time of crisis such as the pandemic, because it's very dynamic and iterative, and it enabled us to change and respond as, for example, public health guidance changed and lockdown restrictions changed during the time of the pandemic. The methods we used were primarily qualitative. However, we did collect some quantitative data and analyze that. And in this presentation, I'll mainly focus on the qualitative data that we collected, but I have included some results from a baseline survey that we undertook. We wanted to use PAR because it helped to capture and prioritize the perspectives of people living with dementia and care staff. And we used a method called reflective thematic analysis to analyze a series of dialogic interviews that we undertook. So what is a Culture Box? That's a question I get asked a lot. And you can see on this slide an image of what the Culture Boxes look like. We sent these boxes, the physical boxes, to care homes once a month for 12 months. And after each physical box, like the ones you see here, were sent out, there were 3 digital boxes that followed each month. So therefore, participants received new material, either a physical or digital Culture Box, every week for 52 weeks during the pandemic. So it was a very busy project. The boxes contained a range of creative materials and activities, including visual arts activities, poetry, music, and lots of links to digital materials. We also commissioned artwork from a range of different artists. And everything in the Culture Boxes was designed to be done in a dyad between a member of care staff and a person living with dementia. And that was particularly important at the beginning of pandemic when people were not able to mix freely within care homes. We also collaborated with lots of other creative organizations, other academics and arts organizations who very kindly shared materials which we sent via the Culture Boxes to care homes around England during the pandemic. And this is some lovely images of some of our research participants engaging with the Culture Boxes. So we collected lots of visual data and reflections as well from our participants and from care staff, as well as residents. So moving on to the findings. Overall, 68 people living with dementia and 28 care staff took part in care homes across England. We had really good geographical coverage. Most of our participants living with dementia were female, aged between 80 and 89 years of age. In line with the aims of the study, 9% of the sample that we recruited were people from Black and Asian minority ethnic groups, and this is reflective of the overall population within the United Kingdom. In terms of the baseline data that we collected from the surveys, almost half the people living with dementia in care homes reported feeling more lonely during the pandemic. And in terms of responsive behaviors, issues such as anxiety and irritability were quite common in that population. The analysis of dialogic interviews elicited a number of key themes of importance to relational care practices. And on this slide, you can see a conceptual framework that myself and colleagues within the team developed, which represents the multifaceted and multidimensional relational impacts of the materials in the culture boxes. And these represent core features around relational care, such as social interaction, building of relationships, and community building. So these are the things I'm going to focus on in sharing the findings. So it's just a little kind of snapshot of the findings. I've included some participant quotes that include pseudonyms to protect the anonymity of our participants, and overall findings from the dialogic interviews that we undertook with the care staff and resident dyads related to 5 different thematic areas with 3 key relational dimensions, the first of which was social interaction. So the culture boxes acted as a catalyst for conversation, for debate, for enjoyment and fun. People reported that they brought life and animation into the care home at a time of immense challenge. And I've provided a quote here on this slide where a member of care staff discusses the change in behavior of one of the residents who normally stayed in his room and didn't interact with other people in the care home. But when he heard the culture box activities were out, he then came out of his room and began to interact with the others. So these culture box activities brought him in conversation and interaction with other residents. Secondly, relationship building. Our participants reported that they got to know each other better through discussing the culture box materials, through doing the activities together. So for example, the box included a commissioned series of trees from around the globe. So on one of my earlier slides, you saw a lovely image of a baobab tree by an artist called Martin Jordan. And these trees were from across the globe, and each tree had a series of associated activities, including music, poetry, bird song, guides to different countries where those trees might be found. And these elicited conversations about things like travel, people's country of origin, their personal preferences and their identity, thus fostering relational care and helping to create bespoke enrichment activities for residents with dementia. So as one of these quotes suggests, people found out things about each other through these conversations that they didn't know, and that helped them build those relationships. And the third issue was around the building of community, both within the care home and outside of the care home. So it was noted that the culture box activities brought people together, people who wouldn't normally talk to each other within the care home. They got people sitting around a table and talking, people who wouldn't normally socialize. And participants also expressed a sense of pride and community at being part of a large national project, which Culture Box was. So that also built community outside of the care home. So now it's a short presentation, so I'm going to move on to the next steps and conclusions. I mean, overall, the culture boxes were really well received. And from a research perspective, we had the opportunity to work with a much larger group of care homes than we would normally over a much wider geographical area. So normally, before the pandemic, I would work intensively with 1 or 2 care homes. In this case, we initially recruited 40 care homes across the country. And our older residents engaged really, really well on Zoom. We had very rich dialogic interviews with those participants. So we want to replicate the use of digital and remote delivery in different settings, and also to consider maybe cost effectiveness as well, because people are always interested in, does this save money? Is this not only a better way to provide a resource, but can we save money on budgets as well? I also, myself and colleagues, want to increase our work with Black and racialized communities. In Culture Box, we sought to work with a range of diverse artists, but we still know that people from particular minority communities don't engage with services so much. They tend to get diagnosed with dementia later. And also, there's a lack of culturally sensitive materials. Often the art forms that are on offer are very kind of white Western in focus. And we want to explore that more with communities in different parts of the UK. Myself and colleagues are undertaking a study currently funded by the National Health Service in the UK, looking at the patient experience of Asian families in West London, where a family member is living with dementia, looking at perhaps their use of traditional Indian art forms as a coping resource for the family member living with dementia. And the project's also been adopted as part of the ACO Storytelling Institute, which is a new institute at University of the Arts in London. And through that, we're able to further investigate the experience of care staff during the pandemic. Care staff weren't our particular focus for Culture Box, but really, I hope to shine a light on the exceptional role that the care staff played under such a challenging circumstances, and also to address the crisis in the social care workforce. I'm not sure about other European countries, but in the UK it's estimated there's over 150,000 unfilled posts in social care, so it's really desperate, and I think working in this creative way is a way to raise awareness of a really positive way to engage with people living with dementia. We continue to disseminate the project at occasions like this, and we also have a forthcoming chapter in a commissioned book series from Manchester University Press that highlights the important role of the arts and humanities during the pandemic and also in readiness for any future crises. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Victoria Tischler, for your contribution. Very interesting also to see how you build bridges between relational care, human-centered care, compassionate relationships, and culture. And I think that kind of projects are future-proof because you're focusing also on cultural minorities and cultural sensitive dementia care. And I think this is where we have to be in the next decade. So thank you very much. Maybe when there are questions for the first two speakers, you can ask them already, but please, this is a hybrid meeting, so put these questions in the social Q&A in the app. But maybe if someone has a question right now, we can take 1 or 2 minutes for that. Yes, sir. And then you. Yeah.
I'm an artist. I also have dementia, and one of the things that I worry about is that we're talking about building bridges, and what I see is academia and arts building bridges, because they're sitting up there, but there's nobody with dementia. And until we have somebody with dementia presenting jointly with you guys, it's not a bridge.
Okay, so it's an important question. The man here in the front says, for the people who are at home and have not heard it because there was no mic at that moment. So there's from academic, from practice, but where is the person with dementia? Maybe Olivier can add, and you, Victoria, you can add as well. And
I don't know. No, this doesn't work. Okay, I have to press the button. Now it works. Thank you for the interesting remark and question. And I think I just wanted to point out once again that, like in the project that we very briefly presented, Dementia in Cultural Mediation, we try to involve people with dementia and their caregivers. We had a reference group which gathered together with people from academia, but also people with dementia, which gathered at their pace and really also looked through their perspective what are the priorities in the project. So we tried to make it bottom up, but I'm completely following what you're saying, that we should do more and it should be more structurally embedded as a quality check also in the academia world. Our project was really like practice driven, so I think that's a different dynamic, but I think what you're saying is it should be everywhere that people with dementia and caregivers are structurally involved, but I think that's always work in progress.
okay, thank you, Olivier. Maybe you can add something?
It's a really, really important point. Thank you for raising it. And I didn't mention that we used participatory design in Culture Box, but we did. So there were artists, and including people living with dementia, who were involved in the project the whole way through. And thank you for reminding me. I should have mentioned that. But they helped to design the boxes, design the branding, design the kind of activities that were included. But yeah, it'd be great to have someone here presenting, so I'm going to think of that next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe Mr. Yes.
Thanks very much. My question is to Victoria from the university down the road, Plymouth. Hi, lovely to see you. One of the most interesting things that I think came out through COVID was the Alzheimer Society UK suggested that 80% of people living with dementia saw their dementia increase rapidly through lockdown. I'm hoping you're going to tell me that this project actually alleviated that, and so in your post-diagnostic, can you actually look at that, or have you looked at it already?
We weren't really measuring it. I mean, what we were trying to do was to address some of the psychosocial symptoms, like around social isolation and loneliness, and some of the responsive behaviours. So we weren't trying to kind of measure, and it was primarily qualitative, so I can't really make any claims about reduction in symptoms. But that was why we developed the project in the first place, because we heard that people were rapidly deteriorating. And of course, we didn't work with people who were living at home in the community, and we only worked with 40 care homes, so I can't say what the whole picture was, but I think working in this remote way we can reach many more people, so hopefully we will in future. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. There was another one question. The last one, and then we go further with the other presentations.
Thanks.
Yes.
Could you maybe give us instructions on what section it's in as well? Can you find it?
Is the section P04, Arts and Culture.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it was a question for Victoria, really. I work in engagement, and I guess, you know, we've thought of ways that we could do that might involve, say, care home staff, but we've also faced a lot of kind of barriers of people saying we are struggling to get the bare minimum done, understaffed. Is that something that you've faced? And as the kind of gap grows wider between the vacancies that we have, how do we incorporate, you know, those elements that could get lost, actually hearing people's voices, art and so on?
One acronym, NAPA. NAPA stands for the National Activity Providers Association. They partnered with us on the project, and they have over 3,000 members, so they have reach into nearly every care home across the country, and that's how we got in through working with NAPA. And I also found there was a real spirit of cooperation during the pandemic that I haven't experienced before. I mentioned about people sharing resources. Often people they like to keep resources to themselves, but people were really generous in sharing. And so I hope that spirit continues, but I think developing relationships with key partners like that's the key.
Okay, thank you very much for the questions and for the interesting answers. So we will go on with Rosie Dunn from the UK about the use of photovoice and photo-elicitation in couples living with dementia and multiple health conditions. Lessons learned and key benefits. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. Like I've already been introduced, my name is Rosie Dunn. I'm a PhD researcher from the University of Hull in the UK. And I'd like to share with you today some of the lessons learned and key benefits from using photo voice and photo-elicitation techniques in couples who are living with dementia and multiple health conditions. So I thought I'd start off first by telling you a little bit about my research. So dementia rarely travels alone. On average, people with dementia also have 4.6 additional health conditions. And some of the common ones include diabetes, stroke, heart disease, depression and hypertension. Additionally, over 2/3 of all carers of people with dementia are elderly spousal carers, over half of which are aged 85 years old and above. Now, given that increase in age is strongly associated with an increase in multiple health conditions, it is likely that spousal carers are also living with multiple health conditions. So married or cohabiting couples are likely to experience the dementia journey together, as well as live with multiple health conditions. So for my PhD research, I was interested in learning more about couples' shared experiences of living with both dementia and multiple health conditions, and how as a couple they support each other to manage this, and whether this has an impact on their relationship or couplehood. So when I was first thinking about how to collect the data on couples' experiences, I thought about the usual conventional methods, such as interviews, focus groups and surveys, that are often used in qualitative psychosocial research in dementia. However, I realised that these methods may not be suitable and could present methodological challenges or even potentially exclude people with dementia from taking part in the research. And this is because people with dementia, as I'm sure you're all aware, struggle from a range of cognitive impairments that can inhibit their ability to take part. So, for example, speech or word-finding difficulties. Some people with dementia may struggle to express themselves verbally in an interview or feel under pressure from being recorded. Memory loss. Some people with dementia may struggle to recall events or their experiences retrospectively. Abstract thinking and reasoning. Some people with dementia may struggle to think more about abstract concepts in the spot under pressure in an interview. And sustaining attention. Some people may struggle to hold their attention for a long period of time and become fatigued with answering a series of questions set by the researcher. And this is not exclusive to people with dementia either, as spousal carers may also be limited if they experience difficulties due to the health problems, for example with reading or writing, hearing, mental health difficulties or fatigue. In fact, they may even experience very similar symptoms to people with dementia themselves. And for the last 2 decades, there has been a growing recognition of the importance of listening to and understanding the perspectives of people with dementia. They have a right to have their experiences heard and be included in research. And as the common phrase goes, nothing about us without us. However, interviews, focus groups and survey methodology remain the norm. And therefore there's a danger that the voices of some people with dementia and carers go unheard because they're unable to take part. And as researchers, we have a responsibility to find ways of including the voices of marginalised people, and there are a range of creative methods that can be used to address this. And photo voice is one of those methods. So photo voice isn't a new method. It was developed by health promotion researchers Caroline Wang and Mary Ann Burris in 1997 and is a participatory research method in which participants take photographs of their experiences over a set period of time, capturing their experiences of the phenomenon that you're interested in researching. So the data collection is very much driven from the participant's perspective, literally seeing their world through their camera lens. And photo-elicitation is where the participants' photos are used in a research interview as prompts to help facilitate discussion and evoke feelings, memories and information. So I use both of these methods in my research with couples who are living with dementia and multiple health conditions. I asked each couple to keep a photo diary for 1 month and to take photographs of anything that they'd deemed significant to them, the good, the bad and the ugly. I then printed these photos and used them as a photo-elicitation technique in a subsequent audio-recorded interview. I recruited 6 couples and they were interviewed together. And within each couple, one partner had dementia and they both experienced 2 or more health conditions. All 6 couples were married, they lived at home together, they were aged 65 or above, and they'd been in a relationship together for an average of 45 and a half years. And there were 3 male and 3 female partners with dementia. 4 couples chose to use a disposable camera and 2 couples chose to use their own digital device. So what were some of the key benefits? Well, as alluded to earlier, the use of photography was really helpful for people with dementia that struggle with a range of cognitive impairments. So, for example, people who struggled with their speech struggled to express themselves in an interview. So, being able to keep a photo diary and print out photos in the interview and also point out the photos within the interview, really helped people to express themselves that they would have not been able to do otherwise in a traditional interview. The use of a photo diary was also helpful to give people a chance to reflect and think about their experiences over a period of time. This helped to provide a much richer account in the interview. It was also useful for people with memory loss as they were able to take photos in the moment, and it helped with memory recall in the interview rather than trying to remember events retrospectively. It can also give power back to the participants as they take the lead on the data collection and empower them to share their story rather than predetermined by the researcher. It can also help strengthen your methodology that you're using by enhancing the richness of the data collected. And finally, I found that couples really enjoyed the activity of keeping a photo diary and looking at the photos and sharing their experiences together. And for many couples, it was the first time that they were able to share their full story, and many of them found that quite cathartic. And in terms of some of the lessons learned, it was really important to allow people time to look through the photos and familiarise themselves with them before starting the interview. So it was important to not rush the interview, as it'll take much longer than a usual standard semi-structured interview. And as with any interview on sensitive issues, emotional distress can arise. So for example, for one person with dementia, seeing photos of them using a Zimmer frame or on the stair lift was upsetting because they were faced with their health difficulties laid out in front of them. However, for other people, seeing photos taken of themselves, their family, their trips and hobbies reminded them of how much they still lead a good quality of life despite the difficulties they face. So some couples will say, oh, we're not that bad really. It was also important to maintain a balance between discussing the photos and addressing any research questions that you have in mind. So it's important that the conversation is led by the participants, but to have in the back of your mind your research questions. Also, if a participant has taken a lot of photographs, it won't be possible to go through every single one. So it's important to ask participants to point towards photographs that's most significant to them. Reduce expectations. Using photo-elicitation alongside a semi-structured interview schedule can be challenging, and it won't go perfectly. Again, it's important to let the participants lead the discussion and accept that the interview schedule will not go in a linear fashion. And don't make assumptions. It may be tempting when first looking at the photographs to make assumptions or try and interpret the meaning behind the photographs. However, it's important that you allow the participant to explain it in the interview, as your understanding could be very different to theirs. One carer said to me, it's not all glossy, implying that there is a tendency to only take photos of the good things and not of the bad. For example, how do you take a photo of your husband annoying you? And she would go like that. So the importance of a subsequent interview was noted here to be able to capture both the positive and the negative experiences. Of course, there was many ethical issues to consider. The importance of making sure that you get consent from participants before you share or publish any photographs. And the importance of the participants recognising that if they consent to photographs being used of their faces, that they would lose their anonymity in the research. There were also many practical considerations. However, one example was the importance of offering the choice of doing the photo diary either together as a couple or individually. Some couples like to do things together, others have their own separate interests, so it was important to respect individuality and togetherness. I'd like to share with you now a small selection of couples' photographs, and I have permission from the couples to share these with you today. So, in conclusion, researchers typically use interviews and observational methods to conduct qualitative psychosocial research. However, these conventional methods may limit the extent to which people living with dementia or other health conditions can participate. Therefore, the use of creative approaches such as photo-voice and photo-elicitation techniques in addition to conventional methods may help the participants' voice to be heard and enhance our understanding of their subjective experiences. And I hope this presentation today encourages the researchers in the audience to consider other creative methods with people with dementia in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, a multi-method participatory approach. A bit difficult to pronounce that, but very interesting to see how you made this. I have one question for you that went in during your talk. Rosie, did you offer couples a chance to be interviewed separately? Some may not give detail for fear of upsetting their partner.
Yeah, that is a really important question. I did offer the choice. However, all couples chose to be interviewed together. But there is, I guess that is a limitation in that, one partner or the other partner may not completely share their full experiences for fear of not upsetting the other partner. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we go on with Mariana Tsatali from Greece, and she will talk about designing an emotional game between older adults with MCI, Mild Cognitive Impairment, and their grandchildren, grandpa and grandma. Let's play. The floor is yours.
Hello everyone. I'm really happy to be here, especially after 2 virtual conferences. I work for Greek Alzheimer Association and I will present you an emotional game between older adults with mild cognitive impairment and their grandchildren. So let's play all together because the initial scope is to find it creative at the first side. This idea for the emotional game is based on the need for intergenerational activities. So I will present you some exercises included in the emotional game through the cards which includes, and hopefully we are going to have some take-home messages after this experience. So, according to developmental psychologist Erickson, people in middle age and older age have to select, hopefully, to be creative and wise instead of feeling stagnation and desperation. So, doing some emotional activities and enhancing their role as grandparents could be really significant and a big challenge. So, after this small introduction, the emotional game is based on specific stages of emotional process, which are emotional expression, recognition, experience, and of course, you can see that there are included some reminiscence tasks inside the game. So this idea came since 2016 because we had a poster here in Alzheimer Europe Conference about the efficacy of delivering interventions about arts, including arts and specifically famous paintings in people with mild cognitive impairment. And we saw that their emotional recognition skills and also their expression were increased. So we thought that it would be a really good idea to expand these activities and put them in a game. But which kind of a game? You can see here that the game is consisted of a dashboard. Of course, this is not the dashboard, the actual, because it's under construction from the graphic team. But just to show you an example of how it would look like, we have 4 players and some cards, 4 types of cards, according to the 4 categories of emotional process that I presented you earlier. And you can see we have the starting point, the ending point, and each player should do something, a small activity, when picking up an emotional card. In order to implement the activities depicted in the cards, we have some materials, for example, the emotional cube, the emotional wheel, some famous paintings, specifically from Greek painters, in order to deliver the cultural experience across generations, and of course we have the emotional book that I will show you afterwards. So I will present some activities included in the cards in order to have a better knowledge of what is happening by means of players' experience. Some cards say that I will roll the emotional cube, but I'm trying to remember a memory which made me feel the emotion depicted on it. And some others say that I mention a hero from, for example, a fairy tale or a book, or a hero from a football team, and what I would like to say with him and discuss with him, so as to have the opportunity to exchange experience between grandchildren and grandparents and share activities. Another activity is a small map of my city. This is now the map of Thessaloniki, but it can be in the map of any other city, and the player has to mention some points or some locations on the map in which they remind them of an experience of the grandchild or the grandparent, so that in the end of the activity they will have this kind of spots that resembles some emotional points through the city, and grandchildren and grandparents can discuss their experience on that. So some emotional things can arise with this activity. Some other cards say draw a picture in the emotional book and make a dedication to your grandparent or grandchild. For example, we had some let's say pilot sessions, and we have this type of drawings from grandchildren. This one depicts I love you, Granny, and the other says that my grandfather has cognitive problems, but we still love him. And as you can see here, the grandparent is like he is flying. So the grandchild realized that something different happens here, but they still love him and they are here for him. We have some emotional recognition activities, because really art can be a game, and knowledge about the culture of its painting can be shared across the players. And you can see some practical examples. For example, please express the feelings when seeing the painting, or write your emotions when looking the paintings, or recognize the emotions from the famous paintings you see from the protagonists, and so on. And here you can see that we included Greek paintings from famous Greek painters, Alekos Fascianos, Yannis Tsarouchis, Theofilos Hadjimichail, and you can see that there are scenes from daily life in local life in Greece about in the middle of 20th century. For example, here people are dancing in a wedding. You can see that they dance in a local dancing mode, and a custom that is still really popular, but also really significant for our economy, picking up olives, which is a great reminiscence for reminiscence opportunity for grandparents to share this with their grandchildren. Some other cards say draw an emotional card and imitate the emotion depicted on it, so as to practice players in imitating activities. And some others say that narrate the time of your life in which you had the feeling depicted on the card, again to reminiscence some moments and to interact emotionally, which is the upper goal of our presentation. Moving to the fairy tales, we realized that there are some bad stereotypes in famous fairy tales. For example, this about the bad stepmother. So there are some cards which say, find a fairy tale with a bad stereotype and please change it in a more optimistic goal. This is not part of our game, but it's a good graph I found and wanted to share it with you. For example, there is a giraffe which is a psychologist and the protagonist of some famous fairy tales which can include some kind of stereotypes. For example, the small mermaid listens from the psychologist, okay, so you change basically everything in order to fit in his world. So we can see also Cinderella is hearing the fact that you dance in a palace party and now you think that this man is everything for you. So with this opportunity you can change the flow in fairy tales and really interact. Oh, you are familiar with the synchronous fairy tales about Frozen. Did you really let it go? I don't know if those who laugh find it also funny. And something about the quarantine. In Rapunzel, the giraffe says, okay, you are very familiar with quarantine. COVID quarantine means nothing to you. So it's a very good opportunity to change things. And this is a good example about dementia awareness, because this is the fairy tale designed by our team, which is called Who Am I, Grandpa? And has the opportunity. It is designed from some workshops delivered in grandchildren of people living with dementia, and it's against stigma and against bad stereotypes, and hopefully this a good tool to move on building dementia stereotypes. So finally, the final slide I would like to share you about our activities. There are some cards which say fill the answer in relevant questions. For example, when I am with my grandpa or grandma, we like to do in order to share some good activities that they are really nice for both groups, for both sides, or what I would like to what I would like my grandchild to say about me. So this is also an emotional opportunity, let's say, to feel closer together. So this is my thought when when preparing the presentation. This picture, this painting from Dali, because time is relatable and intergenerational interventions take me back to the child I was once. So it's a real and emotional process. We have to take, if possible, two take-home messages, a letter to the grandparents I had, because we were all grandchildren, and perhaps we would like to say something to them, even in our fantasy, or written in a small letter. And the next letter is a letter in my future self, as an old man and woman, or as a grandparent, what I would like to do, how I would like to be, because emotions and interacting emotionally can be a different language that some of us, it's really significant to learn how to use this language, how to speak this language. So this is the optimistic part, and my motto is comes from a lyric from a famous Greek poem, Odysseus Elitis, that fishing brings the sea. So starting doing something, perhaps there is a domino effect, and something good may happen in the close future, I guess. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. And the last speaker of this session is Päivi Nisto-Mäkinen from Finland, about neighborhood culture, finding vitality and new friends through cultural encounters.
Hello, and thank you to be here. I'm Päivi Niinisto-Mäkinen, a project coordinator in the Memory Association of South Ostrobothnia, a southern part in Finland. My pleasure to tell you our Neighbourhood Culture project. Finland, like many developed countries, has an aging population. In our area in South Ostrobothnia, 24% of population are over the 5 years old. The Neighbourhood Culture project was started in 2018 and create a specific model that will increase the health and well-being of older people by offering regular group meetings focusing on arts and culture. The aim in neighbourhood culture activities is to reduce loneliness, increase the well-being of older people who are living at home, and reduce the risk of dementia. The group activity scheme weighted towards arts and culture, implemented through a multi-professional network. In this model, older people living at home and group meetings are held as near to their home as possible, like in city centers and municipality areas. For example, in the Housing Association Club Room, at the local library, or at the local service center. The schedule and content of each group are modified the needs of the participant wishes. The group meetings are about having coffee, chatting, exploring a chosen theme, which might be particular genre of art, or something different at each meeting. The activities and content are designed according to the age and functional capacity of the participants. There is a health aspect to this, encouraging everyone to enjoy the health and functional capacity that they have, also draw on the strengths that the participants have. The participants are encouraged to contribute their own skills and to appreciate the contribution of others. Here are a few examples of our group activities. There have been a poetry recitation, a sit-down exercises, a music, singing, playing and listening, self-written stories. Some groups created paintings that were then displayed at the meeting venue. Poems and paintings created in groups have also been published in the project newsletter Korttelisanomat. Events and campaigns have also been outdoor concerts, forest excursions, Elämä itse, Life Itself performance, Unelmasta totta, A Dream Came True campaign, and Taide Avisi publication. Each group has a professional or a peer facilitator or volunteer with the background organization, providing support as needed. These group activities are particularly intended for older people in challenging life situations, and therefore the client counsellors in services for elderly and home care workers play an important part in informing clients about the activities and encouraging them to join in. The neighbourhood culture groups were highly accessible. In an evaluation survey, 1 in 4 respondents reported that they didn't participate in any other group activities or cultural events. 87% report that participation in the groups had brought them more things to do and more meaningful contents in their lives. 88% reported having found new experiences. 86% reported that participation had increased their social interactions. 88% say that their feelings of loneliness has decreased or diminished. 83% report that the group activities had contributed to their well-being, considered that it had been beneficial for their health. Here we see what people have thought about group activities. Group activities take time to set up and establish. If a group dynamic doesn't emerge or the participants remain distant from each other's, busy timetable can spoil the entire group activity scheme. The venues selected may also dictate what kind of activity is feasible or even possible. Each group is customized, including its setting. Something that works for one group meeting at library will not necessarily work for another group meeting at the housing company club room. What next? The project ended in spring 2022, and 200 older people have participated in the project. During the whole project, there have been a total 30 groups, of which 16 groups continue. The groups that have emerged in the project have been attached to existing structures provided by non-governmental organizations, local government actors, and third sector organizations. Good results have been achieved in establishing the group activities, with some of the groups transitioning to volunteer leadership. The volunteer groups leaders are provided with material to help leading the groups, along with constant support and peer meetings from the background organization. Some groups have become permanent functions in the activities of both cultural organization and services for elderly. Some groups have been adopted by community colleges, which have been very nice cooperation, with courses fees kept low and venues close to the participant homes. Some groups have been adopted by other non-governmental organizations. Our association have good social networks in our area that make it easy to continue group activities after the project. Art and culture give you a lot. In the safe atmosphere, everyone can feel star moments. Thank you, your interest.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I have two questions that came in during the talks of your board. Maybe first for you, with the Neighbourhood Culture project, are there similarities to the Dutch meeting center model, or are they distinct? But I think the person who sent in the question knows what the Dutch meeting center model is. Maybe I can talk about that too in 1 second. That are a kind of daycare centers. They are not totally similar, but there is the meeting of the person with dementia and the possibility to have there as well the family caregiver. So maybe you can explain us a bit the difference between that kind of offer, service offer, and yours. Is that possible? Maybe there is someone in the room here that has made this question, or not. It was you. Okay, sorry. Maybe you can explain a bit, because I can't see if it's online or not.
I mean, it came to Scotland now, the meeting centre model.
Yeah.
They seem to be developed in such a way that people living with dementia, family carers can also attend. So So people living with dementia, family carers can also attend, and is often done on a third model in terms of what's decided. People put forward what activities they would like to do. So one place can look very different to another place in another town. So I saw some similarities, which is great to see, that community support, social support is very valued. But I just wondered if you saw similarities or if there was differences that I wasn't seeing in the short presentation.
Maybe it's a bit a difficult question, but you will meet each other in the meeting room over there. Maybe it's so a specialized answer that maybe you can talk to each other then. Then there is another question for Olivier, and the question is, what did the storytelling activity box include in the DCUM project, in the Dementia in Cultural Mediation project? Olivier.
Yeah, I think the person who's asking the question just means like the overall toolbox of the project, because we don't have a separate storytelling toolbox, so that's not really clear for me. So I'll just go into the topic of the general toolbox, which is actually the website of the project. So what can people find in that digital toolbox? First of all, the 30 projects that were selected within the project based on the 5 partners from four partner countries. And the interesting thing is, obviously, arts and culture are also geographically very specific and varied. So, and we also try to incorporate also that intercultural aspect in a selection of the projects. So that's one thing. A second important thing that people can find in the toolbox are the detailed project sheets. If you remember the presentation that I gave at the start of the session, I projected some screenshots of those sheets, and they really explain from start to finish what the trajectory is of each project. And obviously, like, the aim of these detailed project sheets is to make not only projects transferable to other countries or regions, but also to make them culturally adaptable, so people can find maybe some interesting elements within those sheets and then use them for their current or future projects. And the last thing in the toolbox is also projected it during the presentation, is the recommendations publication. And there we kind of broaden the perspective of the whole project. So it's not mainly about those 30 projects, but it's more like the lessons learned, what are the opportunities, the barriers when you want to make these kind of projects sustainable at a different level, so at the micro level, the meso level, and at the general level of the organization. And these are actually the 3 basic pillars of the toolbox. I hope this answers the question a little bit, because it was not totally clear for me. Maybe a last thing, people can ask a question: what are your selection criteria of these projects? I didn't go into that in the presentation, but for us, like, the first basic selection criteria is, are the projects relevant for people with dementia, and also do they do justice to the diverse reality of people with dementia. So I think arts and culture really are an interesting topic also to reach people in the later stages of the condition, and that was also really like a focus within the project. So it's not only about people who still can do like verbally expression, but we try to include like the whole variety of projects. So I hope this answers the question a little bit.
Thank you, Olivier, for the last question. I would like to thank you as well as an audience to be here, to be present here for this theme. I would like to thank the speakers that have made the preparation in a very short time schedule, but you succeeded all. Thank you for that. I wish you good luck in the next years of the project that you will conduct then. Thank you very much, and see you another time.